Ladies and gentlemen, we have Mike Pierce on the final round here on WRW. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, or as well as I can.
Awesome. I know we were talking before. You recently just had knee surgery. How did that happen? I know you said you tore your meniscus, I believe. How did you get that injury?
Well, it was more than just a meniscus. I had a torn meniscus and a torn ACL, and it was bad enough to where, once I got my MRIs after my last fight, they, suggested I get looked at by a surgeon and probably have surgery. So that's exactly what happened. And, part of it's a little leftover damage from the Paul Harris fight. I mean, let's be real. He didn't exactly help anything.
Sure, yeah.
Any like that. So, probably a little bit of the damage was left over from Paul Harris because, after that fight, I had the same sort of thing done where I had an MRI and looked at by the same surgeon who ended up doing the surgery on me a couple weeks ago. And he said, there's a little bit of tearing and, a little bit of damage, but not enough to really warrant the surgery. He said, if you just baby it for a couple months and just treat it right, you'll probably be okay and bounce back. And that was, totally the case. I followed what he said and was nice to it for a couple months and was back in the training room just fine and didn't have any problems. And then it wasn't until this camp for my last fight, maybe it was probably 2 months before my fight. I had a relatively new jiu-jitsu coach who thought had a little more control than he did, and he dropped down to a heel hook with just a few seconds left in the round. We were just doing submission grappling, and it was a freak accident. He grabbed the heel hook, and it made my knee pop 2 more times. So there was that little bit of damage too, which I didn't get looked at, and probably should have. But there was a couple times in that fight that I had with Ryan where I kicked him with my left leg, and as soon as I brought it back and went to put weight on it, it literally felt like it was going to give out on me. And I felt like I was going to fall to the ground, but I kind of realized, okay, I'm still standing, I'm still in the fight, so get back to throwing punches.
Yeah, for sure.
And I had to remind myself because I was just in absolute pain. I don't know really how to describe it. It was this aching, throbbing pain inside my knee that I'd never felt before, and I knew that I probably shouldn't throw any more kicks with that leg.
Sure, for sure. And, of course, that was a good back-and-forth fight. That was in the TUF finale a couple months ago. And you actually got cut on January 29th by the UFC. Were you kind of surprised by it? Because, you're before the Paul Harris fight, you're on a 4-fight win streak. You lose to Paul Harris, very controversial in how he finished that fight. Of course, he got cut. And then you're on a 2-year hiatus, essentially, rehabbing your leg. You come back, you lose to LaFleur, and then you get cut by the UFC. Was that kind of surprising to you?
Yes and no. I mean, I knew it was kind of a toss-up, to be honest. I mean, as American guys, usually, if you lose twice, especially as American guys, if you lose twice in a row, sometimes your number's up more often than not. But I did kind of think, well, maybe they won't because I've been around a while and I had a 4-fight win streak and I've kind of proved myself. I mean, I'm a good fighter. I think I think I belong in that league and definitely got the skills to do it. And I've been there since 2009, so. It did kind of take me by surprise a little bit, but that's the side of the business fighters have to deal with, unfortunately, and it was just my time, I guess.
Yeah, and you before the Paul Harris injury, you're a very active fighter. You fought 4 times in 2012, 3 times in 2011. What was that like to be in that that break from 2013 and of course until 2015 when you fought LaFleur?
Oh, with my hiatus?
Yeah.
That was really frustrating. I mean, that was a combination of my leg, and then I had a broken hand, which really took the most time to rehab because the surgeon that did it originally kind of gave me an unrealistic timeline, and I went back to training sooner than I should have and kind of re-injured it a little bit, which prolonged the healing process again. And once I got with a new surgeon, he put me on the right path. He was actually a hand specialist and had the right program for me in a realistic timeline that I was able to follow, and it wasn't much longer after I dealt with that surgeon that I was, able to get a fight again. But yeah, it was. It's been frustrating because, like I said, when I first started in this game, I was really active. I was always fighting. I didn't turn down really any fights, and being as active as I was, to go from that to just having to watch, teammates fight month after month and do their thing while I was just kind of sitting there. And really the only thing that was keeping me back was this little tiny bone in the back of my hand. It was frustrating, but I got through it, and now here I am dealing with a separate issue.
For sure. And speaking of that, what is your future? Have you talked with any promotions, or is your focus solely on just rehabbing your injury right now?
No, I haven't talked with any promotions yet. I've kind of put out a little feelers here and there. Haven't heard anything back yet. But, yeah, right now my main focus is to kind of – I'm just under 2 weeks out from surgery here, so I've just kind of been focused on rehabbing that. I've had a few different PT sessions already, making good progress. So things are looking good, but primarily I've just been focused on his leg because I'm here hobbling around on crutches and can't really do much of anything else. So just kind of doing what I can to rehab this every day. For sure. And switching topics here, of course, you've been a veteran in the game for a long time. I just wanted to get your thoughts on the Reebok deal. What are your thoughts on that? You experienced that Reebok deal with the LaFleur fight, getting the fight kits and all that. How does it compare with the Reebok, the new Reebok era, and then before that, where you got to have your own sponsors? Are you a fan of it, or do you think that's the future of the sport? What are your thoughts? Well, here's my thoughts on it about it, and this is unequivocally the truth. Okay, before the Reebok deal, people were making more money, getting their own sponsors, and even going through all of the loopholes that Zuffa puts on, particular sponsors, like ones that are competitive to their exclusive sponsors and all that. People were still making, I'm pretty sure, more money than they were with the Reebok deal. You've heard story after story coming to the surface where guys were making, $50,000 to $100,000 on sponsorships alone, and now they've, kind of taken a pay cut because the UFC now pays sponsor money from Reebok based on a tier system, based on how many fights they've had under the Zuffa umbrella. So, that's kind of a negative because a lot of people are taking pay cuts, and some of these newer people that are stars in the promotion now, especially the females, because they're a relatively new addition to the organization. They haven't been around as long as some of the guys, so they're not getting paid nearly as much, but they're getting the same exposure as the guys. So I see that argument where it's kind of unfair, based on that tier system, I think. I don't know. It's good on one hand because then you don't have to chase these sponsor dollars all the time.
Right.
So that's one aspect of it. But I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of people taking pay cuts where they probably could have been making more getting sponsors on their own, to be honest. But, on one hand, I also see the argument that the UFC makes where it looks more professional, like a lot of the other professional leagues out there, like the NBA or the NFL or any of these other leagues, where they all have a uniform look, which is nice. I just wish it would match the dollars that those other leagues get to, you know what I mean? Yeah, for sure.
And do you think fighters are still being underpaid under the Zuffa umbrella? Do you think maybe there should be a fighters union, or maybe more public outcry that fighters need to get paid more? Did you personally feel affected by that?
Personally affected by what?
The purse, I guess. Yeah, the fighter pay. Did you feel like you weren't getting paid enough? Maybe some of your teammates weren't getting paid enough?
I honestly think that this whole talk about the fighter union and stuff, or a fighters association and pay and everything like that's going to have to be addressed at some point. I think that there's a lot of outcry from the fans, the fighters, and I think that at some point Zuffa is going to have to address that, and I don't know what their plan is, or what if the fighters can even come together under some unified group to kind of talk to the UFC about better wages or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I think that we could get paid a lot better. I don't know exactly how much the UFC makes annually. That's all kind of private information that I read these stories online about the class action lawsuit that's going on with them right now, and right now they're in this discovery process. They're trying to get as much information as they can, and I don't know all the details, but I certainly think that the amount of money that the Zuffa makes should be distributed a little bit better towards the talent. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that makes for better fights. I think it makes for better camps and for safer camps too. So these fighters can actually train and afford the costs of injuries that do happen. I mean, people are always pulling out. I mean, Dos Anjos is a perfect example of that. I just think it would help the fighters a lot and help put on better shows.
For sure. And just a couple more questions. And again, thank you for your time, Mike. I just want to get your thoughts on actually UFC 196 over the weekend. Of course, you were a member of the UFC welterweight division. You're pretty familiar with those guys there. What were your thoughts overall of Conor McGregor going up 2 weight classes to fight at 170 pounds?
Everyone's talking about Conor McGregor going up 2 weight classes like he was the only dude going up in weight. And here's the bottom line for me. Basically what happened is those guys just didn't cut any weight. They just were walking around at whatever they normally walk around at, which didn't really seem to be too far apart because they both weighed in at under 170 pounds. So bottom line, none of them cut weight. Conor cuts a ton of weight to make 145 as it is. And so I think if he didn't cut as severely, he'd probably be a 55 anyway. And he's already expressed, interest in fighting there anyway with Dos Anjos. So, I think that Conor had a good first round, but Diaz stuck with his game plan and came out the second and put a hurting on him. And I don't think it should have surprised anyone. I mean, Conor's got some decent stand-ups, so does Diaz, but Conor doesn't have an excellent ground game. I mean, we saw that with Mendez for a little bit in that first round that they fought, where Mendez was just completely dominating him, but. I knew just as soon as Conor shot on Diaz, he was kind of in that desperation mode. And, listening to Diaz after the fight, he was kind of like, oh, man, I knew it was a wrap at that point because he shot on me. Like, he all of a sudden wanted to be a wrestler.
Yeah, exactly.
He was winning the exchanges at that point. So, he's still a good fighter, but he's not as well-rounded as Diaz, and, that's one part of his game where he's got a little bit of a chink in his armor, and he needs to work on it, but, it was a great fight.
For sure. And just coming back full circle, forgot to bring up, again, Paul Harris. Of course, he is suspended for 2 years over the Jake Shields fight. You personally, do you think he should be expelled from the game, essentially?
Yeah, that friggin' asshole doesn't need to fight anymore, man. All he does is injure people and ruin their careers. That's literally all he does. So, no, he doesn't need to fight, in my opinion.
Okay, awesome. Mike, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate the call, and hopefully you can come back next time.
Yeah, no problem, man. Anytime.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye.